Tonight on PrimeTime Politics, foreign interference on Parliament Hill.
The government should hand over all of those 4,000 documents, unredacted.
Just give all the documents unredacted.
Opposition parties want allegations involving politicians sent to the public inquiry.
We'll be happy to work with the Commission on the best way forward.
The government is signaling support, but what will the inquiry and Canadians learn? MPs weigh in. The Prime Minister and the Premier of Quebec, Justin Trudeau and Francois Legault, meet on immigration. We'll have analysis on what both leaders are saying after those talks. And
I think we need to ask ourselves of retribution or rehabilitation.
The trucker causing the Humboldt bus crash has been ordered to leave Canada, but one MP is trying to build support to stop the deportation. George Chahal tells us why. This is PrimeTime Politics. Hello, I'm Andrew Thompson in for Michael Serapio. We started with foreign interference and the allegations involving the parliamentarians knowingly taking part. The opposition now wants to expand the mandate for the public inquiry into foreign interference. The government says Justice Marie-Josée Hogue already has the authority and access she needs. However, Liberals are signaling support for a bloc motion calling for expanded terms of reference. And the Public Safety Minister says government lawyers are in contact with the Commission. Here's more from Dominic LeBlanc.
If the lawyers for the Hogue Commission said they would like the terms of reference to be changed, we would obviously work collaboratively with them in that regard. They haven't discussed with us deadlines or extensions. Again, that once the Commission is up and running, the government can't unilaterally impose on the Commission a change of their terms of reference. If the Commission wants to work with the government, we believe they do. We would obviously be very, very anxious to ensure that they have all the resources and the time necessary to do this work.
And for more, let's welcome MPs now. Mark Gerretsen is the Deputy Government House Leader. Andrew Scheer is the Conservative House Leader. Jean-Denis Garon is the Bloc Québécois Industry Critic. And Alexandre Boulerice is NDP Deputy Leader. Good to see you all. Mr. Gerretsen, I want to start with you because the government is signaling support for today's bloc motion, but it is non-binding. So will there be more explicit instructions being sent to Justice Hogue when it comes to these unnamed parliamentarians?
Well, I mean, what we do know is that the Hogue Commission's work and the setup of the Commission was done unanimously with all political party support late last summer. We also understand that everybody has great faith and confidence in the Commission's ability to do the work. And we would agree that that's the right place to study this. And I was really glad to see just over the weekend, Mr. Scheer wrote a letter to the government basically expressing that on behalf of the Conservative Party as well. The responsible place to have these discussions is amongst the people that are classified, that have the proper classification to have the discussions, and that can handle the information responsibly and appropriately.
Okay, Mr. Scheer, on that note, your party would like Justice Hogue to provide a special report by October 1st on each of these unnamed parliamentarians in that NSICOP report, and you want that report to include names. But, you know, we did hear Minister LeBlanc today say that government lawyers have been in touch with the inquiry on this issue. He says reading out a list of names would be irresponsible. So for Conservatives, why is there this need to go beyond expanding the terms of reference and to give those kind of specific instructions?
Well, quite simply because the intelligence report states that there are sitting members of Parliament who are wittingly helping the interests of foreign hostile governments. That cannot be allowed to happen. The problem with the approach that the government seems to be taking is that they're going to have the Hogue Commission look at this, but not in any way with a result that Canadians can find out which members of Parliament broke their oath and their responsibility to the Canadian people. And that's not going to happen unless the Conservative approach is adopted. So not only did I write a letter to the Hogue Commission and the Minister of Public Safety, but today Conservatives tried to amend the bloc motion to have more of an outcome-based approach to this, and that outcome would be that the Commission would find out, have some findings of fact. What of the findings of the report can they substantiate? Some kind of due process where people named in the report could have an opportunity to respond, and then ultimately having the names put forward to the Canadian people so that Canadians can restore their faith in their democratic institutions. The idea that in a few moments there's going to be members of Parliament voting on legislation, on taxation policies later on in the week, being in caucus meetings, committee meetings, access to all kinds of information, and they might be passing that along to foreign governments. I mean, that's incredibly disturbing. And the Liberals have sat on this for years, knowing that this has been going on, and that's why Conservatives are pushing for some more concrete action.
Okay, so Mr. Garon, you've heard Conservatives now call for what your party is putting forward to be expanded. Do you support this idea of giving the Commission more specific orders than what's in your party's motion today in the House?
Well, look, we've known for a long time that there had been interference in our elections. Now, with this intelligence report, what we know is that some specific people sitting in Parliament, that it be in the Senate or in the House, have collaborated with these foreign powers. Now that we know that, we have to do things responsibly, and I think we have to broaden the mandate of the Commission so that the Commission can come up with a responsible way to address these questions, because let's be clear, what we reproach these people is that they have broken the law, and currently we can't name these people out loud because this is going to be it would be an illegal move. By doing so, we could also put at risk informants and other people who have worked diligently for the Canadian government. So I think that we have to trust the Commission. And by the way, it took us a long time to have this Commission set up. At first, the Prime Minister didn't want anything like a Commission. There had been this supposedly independent special rapporteur. And finally, we had this Commission. Now it's there. We have a competent judge that's chairing the Commission. I think that's a proper tool to use, and we have to give some freedom to Justice Hogue, and that she has to provide us with some solutions to do things legally.
Okay, now, Mr. Boulerice, your party has said that the NDP would support this motion and that the government needs to find a way to release these names. How will you use your party's position to try and get this done? Is this something that you'd be willing to break your supply and confidence agreement over?
It's been a question since 3 years on different issues, but I think that what is really serious right now is that we have to restore the trust of Canadians to our democratic institutions, to this House of Commons and the Senate. What we would do is that would make sure that every political leader accept the clearance security to have access to this information. What is really troubling right now, more than MPs maybe working for foreign powers, is that we have a Prime Minister and the leader of the Liberal Party who knows those names since March and did nothing. And after that, we have the leader of the Conservative Party who refused to get the security clearance to get the information and have the list of those names, because he doesn't want to do anything on his own member of the Conservative caucus. So we have two big parties, Liberals and Conservative, that are doing nothing and acting like to protect their own members that might be on that list. Jaskirat Singh have the security clearance, he got the information, and he didn't have to kick out of the NDP caucus any of my colleagues. But we don't know why Mr. Trudeau is not acting on some maybe Liberal members that are on that list. He has this information. As the Prime Minister and the leader of the Liberal Party, he has the responsibility to expel every members that are maybe working for foreign powers. The same thing with the Conservative leader. Okay, well, I'll let those two party representatives respond in kind. Mr. Gerretsen, I'll start with you, because the government has been accused of being less than forthcoming with documents for the Hogue Commission and for NSICOP. So why should Canadians be confident about this process moving forward?
Well, I think we should start by clarifying some facts. Number one, when people are saying that just the party leaders would have access to information if they got the security clearance, I agree, all party leaders should have security clearance. And why since over a year since Pierre Poilievre has been the leader, he hasn't bothered to get that security clearance is beyond me, because then he would have access to that information. But let's not also forget that the NSICOP committee is made up of parliamentarians from each of the political parties represented on this panel today. They have access to that information. As a matter of fact, they were part of compiling that information and producing the report. They would have seen the various different forms of accusations and potential evidence that went into this report. They know a lot of the information. So to suggest that accountability doesn't already exist is untrue. It exists. What the question is how do you handle the information? And it's really important for the public to reflect on the fact that accusations and intelligence is not fact and evidence. And intelligence can be substantiated evidence, but it can also be rumors. So it's really important that we respect the manner in which the intelligence is gathered and how it has to be treated. So there are members of Parliament that already sit on the NSICOP committee that have access to this information on behalf of the individual political parties. And we genuinely believe that we want to have transparency shine on this. It's just a matter of doing it in a responsible way to protect the information and the people in particular, as was previously mentioned by one of my colleagues, that contributes to that, to compiling that information.
Okay, I do want to bring in some more response in the time we have left. So, Mr. Scheer, let me go to you, because we heard Conservatives in the House today saying that we need to clear up the cloud of suspicion over foreign interference, and that there even need to be expulsion debates if needed to protect the integrity of Parliament. So how does that kind of urgent language match up with the fact that your leader is reluctant to actually go and get classified briefings on this?
Yeah, well, that whole issue is a complete red herring. It's a defense mechanism by the government to try to provide the Leader of the Opposition with a briefing that he can then never talk about. And what Mr. Gerretsen said about members of the Intelligence Committee that produced this report, yes, they've seen the information, but they're not allowed to talk about it. They're not allowed to talk about it even to their colleagues. So just the fact that there's members of different parties on that committee does not mean that Parliament knows what's going on, or that the public is. I let you finish, Mark. The government has had years. Justin Trudeau has had years. He's been warned about foreign interference for years. He has failed to come up with any kind of process that would respect due process, the principles of law, to allow people who are accused to defend themselves and to address the types of evidence that exist. But he hasn't. He has done absolutely nothing. He's had phony processes like the special rapporteur, David Johnston, his ski buddy, who, by the way, must look pretty foolish today after saying there was really nothing to worry about. Now we know not only was there problems in previous elections, but we've got sitting members of Parliament who are helping foreign and hostile governments. That's the thing that we need to start and end with. Yes, we absolutely agree that we need to be fair to people who are accused of things. We have to respect the intelligence process. We don't want people working for our intelligence agencies to be under threat. But surely to goodness, like many of our allies have done, we can come up with a process that can investigate that type of thing that ends up with the public knowing which members of Parliament were doing this kind of thing. That has to be sacred. The idea that members of Parliament work for Canada, first and foremost, first and last, that must be preserved. And right now, it's under threat because Justin Trudeau has done nothing for years after being warned.
Okay, very quickly, I do want to bring in Mr. Garon. I'll let you weigh in on this, because your leader, Mr. Blanchet, has suggested that he's now open to getting classified briefings.
Well, he's been thinking about it. I think all leaders should be thinking about getting the information, but it remains true that they can't reveal that information if they have it, so they can act upon it. But what you just heard is one more demonstration that we need to be responsible. We need to broaden the mandate of the Commission. We need to put that out of the hands of politicians. We need to make sure we follow the law, but that the Canadian public is well served. And I think that what we have in the motion is the most responsible solution for the moment. And I think the exchange you heard just before me is a clear demonstration of that.
Okay, Mr. Boulerice, a last word to you, because your party wants the public inquiry to look at allegations involving Conservative leadership races. We heard that from Jagmeet Singh earlier. Why single out those allegations?
Well, we want a broader mandate for the Commission, and I think we don't want to save any aspects of our democratic and electoral system unchecked. And there's some allegations about the Conservative leadership race, the last two ones, and I think it's a good idea to be sure that we check everything and to be sure that all the citizens will have trust in their own institution and democratic process. And I really invite, like Jack Mead already did, the leader of the Bloc and the Conservative to get the security clearance, at least to know what's going on in their own caucus.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Thanks to all four of you for your time on this.
Thank you.
The federal government is putting up $750 million to help Quebec with the cost of hosting asylum seekers. However, the province was looking for $1 billion as compensation. And Premier Francois Legault says he also wants a 50% reduction in temporary immigration. The Prime Minister says the province needs a plan when it comes to immigration. Have a listen to both leaders.
I think it's about time that we put targets with figures. And the problem is urgent. So we cannot say we'll continue working for months and months about the principles. It's about time we put some targets.
And there is still $750 million on the table, though.
Right. So we were asking for $1 billion, so they offer $750 million. So we'll take the money, but we'll continue to ask for more.
Mr. Legault is talking about targets that he has without a plan to reduce the numbers that are directly controlled by Quebec. Quebec itself controls over half of all the temporary immigrants in Quebec. They need to come forward with a proposal. We've come forward with a number of measures that we are taking on, that we are doing to address some of the concerns that Quebec has. And if they want to do more, well, we need to do it together.
For more on what we heard, let's welcome Catherine Lévesque, parliamentary reporter with the National Post, and Geneviève Tellier, a political analyst and professor at the University of Ottawa. Good to see both of you. Catherine, so we heard the Premier talking about money. He didn't get all the money he was looking for, but we did hear the Prime Minister talk about some more effort to address claims by asylum seekers, to work with provinces about distributing more asylum seekers in other provinces. So all in all, should the Premier consider this a successful day?
He won't say it was a successful day for sure. He actually said he was disappointed by the outcome of the meeting. I think he was hoping for more. But when you look at what was announced, I mean, you know, he got a lot of money. He got a good chunk of what he was asking for. I personally was very surprised by that amount. But he also got a number of promises on asylum seekers, you know, promises to treat them for a better treatment of them, you know, so that they don't stay in Quebec, that they go in other provinces. He also got a number of really good wins, I would say, on a program of mobility by the federal government so that people who come into the province have actually French language skills. So I think he got a lot of things, but that being said, I mean, the work is still ongoing. They're meeting again in September, and I think we might see some more announcements at that time.
Right, so Geneviève, the work is ongoing. Where do you see things in terms of the immigration file after today's meeting?
An improvement. It's much better today. I'm much more optimistic than I was yesterday, I must say. I didn't thought that they would agree on a number of files, like Catherine said. And so there are some significant progress, I would say, between the two. So they are speaking, they are talking. I think where are the disagreement is about the numbers. And so Ottawa has its own numbers, Quebec has its own. They will try to reconcile those numbers. And I think that the next meeting well, in fact, date is September. So we'll see by then the progress done on that file.
And Catherine, I guess put this into perspective for people who might not have been following this, people outside of Quebec. Why has this issue ballooned in Quebec in recent months?
In recent years, I would say, because it's really ballooned because, as we know, Roxham Road, that was in Quebec, that has since been closed. But the reality is that most of asylum seekers actually come to Quebec or Ontario now first. But mostly, it was usually mostly in Quebec, and provinces usually give a number of services, so healthcare, daycare, schools, and so the province says it's at a breaking point right now, and it can't give all those services anymore, and it's really reflecting badly. We have all these news reports on people, asylum seekers in Quebec who have to live in cars, people who have to, who have to be in homeless shelters. So this is really ballooning into a big problem. I think we're seeing some of that in Ontario as well, but it really started in Quebec, and the reality is I think a lot of people want to stay in the province and maybe don't necessarily want to go to like Saskatchewan. Nothing against Saskatchewan, but maybe it's not as popular, I would say.
Right, and Geneviève, we know that this comes on the heels of what we heard from the Premier of Quebec on Friday, giving that statement about creating a new advisory committee on Quebec's autonomy, about the Constitution, and one part of that mandate is immigration. So how do you see that playing out now that we do have a bit of cooperation on the file, but we do also have the Legault government really taking this extra step now when it comes to Quebec's provincial jurisdiction?
And I don't know if you recall, but at the point, Legault wanted a referendum just on immigration. So it's kind of let's put off the referendum on that, and let's go with this special committee on autonomous Quebec. I think that for Legault, that's why he maybe was not very pleased today, was because if he had everything that he wanted for, there's no point of having a committee. And so the committee is to help him get more support, or that Ottawa meets his request. And so what's the purpose of the committee? It should still be there, but on the immigration file, perhaps not as relevant as what he thought last Friday.
Okay, very quickly, Catherine, let me get you on this committee. How do you think it's going to reverberate here in Ottawa?
Oh goodness, I don't know if it's going to reverberate here because I think it's mostly a distraction. He announced it, out of the blue. I don't think it created a lot of waves here, and I think people on the federal level maybe just dismiss this as yet another committee that will issue a report that will be tabled, and people will forget about it. So
okay, well, we'll still watch anyway. Catherine Lévesque and Geneviève Tellier, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Calgary Liberal MP George Chahal is trying to build support for keeping one of his constituents in Canada. That constituent is Jaskirat Singh Sidhu, the truck driver who caused the deadly Humboldt Broncos bus crash 6 years ago and who now faces a deportation order. Here is Chahal with Michael Serapio talking about that effort.
Mr. Chahal, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Listen, I need to start with the why here. Why involve yourself in the cause of an individual who was involved in one of the more tragic incidents in the last 10 years in this country? Why involve yourself in that?
Well, Michael, I've been following this tragic accident for a number of years. I was a city councillor at the time when I saw this happen. And I know this tragic accident touched Canadians across the country. And my thoughts and prayers go first with the families who are still grieving. As a member of Parliament, and Mr. Sidhu is a constituent of mine. He just happens to be living in Northeast Calgary. And when I reflect on my role as a member of Parliament, what I believe morally is what I'm obligated to do, I felt it was my obligation to stand up and support Mr. Sidhu so he could remain in Canada with his family. When I saw the tragic accident, and I've reflected over the last number of days after meeting with Mr. Sidhu and his family, as a father, as a husband, I'm a dad of 3 girls, and it's unimaginable the loss that's occurred and how the families are dealing with their grief and how they move forward. So I can't even imagine what they've gone through. And I know it's been difficult, and it is a difficult journey. Mr. Sidhu is also grieving, and he has a heavy burden on him. So does his wife, who's a registered nurse, a Canadian citizen, who actually is working in the same ICU where their son, when he was born, was treated, as he has a heart and lung condition that requires specialized neonatal care. She's working back in the same hospital. When I looked at that child, when I did meet with the family last week, I saw a child with a bright future. And, when I thought about what his future would look like without his father, or just with his mother as a single parent, I knew I had to step in and support Mr. Sidhu and his family to make sure that young child has a future here and has health care that can help him be healthy and well, and that mother, his mom, also has her partner to help support their family as we move forward.
Okay, let me jump in there because they're quickly running out of time, unfortunately. But you mentioned the families, and when you speak to the families, yes, there are those who have forgiven Mr. Sidhu, but there are also a number of families who say closure really isn't possible with him in the country. They want to see this deportation happen. What do you say specifically to those families?
Well, Mr. Sidhu has acknowledged what happened on with that tragic accident. He was incarcerated, he's been rehabilitated, and he's back in our community, and he's very remorseful. And I think we need to ask ourselves of retribution or rehabilitation. And I think as Canadians, we believe in rehabilitation, and we believe in keeping this family together. This will tear apart Mr. Sidhu's family, and will also in the future impact his child's ability to have a healthy lifestyle and being able to grow here in Canada. And so what I'm asking,
I'm sorry to jump in, except that when you look at the judgment that came down over his case, the judge acknowledged that Mr. Sidhu has expressed remorse. He acknowledged that it's not going to be easy, but at the same time, the law fairly clear here. If you are not a Canadian citizen, if you are an immigrant to this country and commit a serious crime, then you must be deported. So he is just following the letter of the law.
Well, the officer did state that as well in the deportation hearing last week, which resulted in Mr. Sidhu not being able to work anymore and his wife being the sole breadwinner for the family. But as Mr. Sidhu's lawyers indicated, he will be applying for based on humanitarian compassionate grounds, which were not a part of the decision by the officer on the deportation. And I'm hoping that through his application on humanitarian compassionate grounds, that he is given the opportunity to remain here with his family so he can be a husband and a father to a young Arjun who has a bright future ahead as a united family here in Canada. And, I'm hoping also that, the minister can and really reflect upon the humanitarian compassionate aspects of what's happened with Mr. Sidhu and how he's acknowledged that from the day of the tragic accident and moving forward. And we allow him to be here in Canada with his family. And I believe as his member of parliament, but morally as a Canadian, we believe in these values. And I am hoping to gain support through my travels in the days and weeks ahead, and building consensus with my parliamentary colleagues as well.
Okay, I've got 30 seconds, but I do need to ask you, because you have written out to the Liberal caucus, and of course the Minister of Immigration is a member of your caucus. Any indication at all as to whether or not your fight here is getting any support within the caucus and from the minister?
I haven't spoken to the minister since I've sent out that email. But I have got a number of caucus members who have expressed support. I've also received hundreds of emails from Canadians from across the country who are very supportive and Mr. Sidhu having the opportunity to stay here. And I'm going to continue that work with meeting community and faith groups in the days and weeks ahead and stand with Mr. Sidhu to help him remain here in Canada to be with his family and to be a father and to be a husband.
George Chahal, thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That was Michael Serapio with Calgary Skyview MP George Chahal. That is our show for Monday. Thanks for joining us on Primetime Politics. I'm Andrew Thompson in Ottawa. Good night.